Bride wanted for a wedding at the Grand Astoria's West Garden Ballroom, October 8th. Any takers? Caleb Hayes typed out the post, carefully blocking his fiancée, Isla Vance, and anyone connected to her before hitting send. The comments rolled in fast. Most of his friends assumed he was just blowing off steam. They started placing bets on how long it would take for him to come crawling back to apologize, just like all the other times. Only one reply stood out. Bride wanted? I'm in. Caleb tapped the profile picture. Sloan Kennedy. He typed back, it's a date then. October 8th. We're getting married. After sending the message, a wave of emptiness washed over him. He'd chased Isla for 3 years before he finally won over the campus ice queen. The 3 years they'd dated were the happiest of his life. His family had been pushing for a wedding, but he'd held off, not wanting to pressure her. So he was floored when, after he finally mentioned it, Isla had considered it for a moment before saying, okay, how about next month, the 8th? He'd been so ecstatic he couldn't sleep all night. His best friend, Mark, had clapped him on the back. Damn, man, you finally did it. But one phone call had shattered that perfect dream. Isla had agreed to pretend to be her childhood friend Julian's girlfriend. Caleb had gone from shock to numbness over the last 3 days as they fought about it. Their wedding was on October 8th, and his fiancée was about to go play house with another man. You call pretending to be his girlfriend a small favor? Caleb had demanded. Why you? Why couldn't he ask someone else? What are our friends going to think of me? What if Julian Croft asked you to sleep with him? Would you do that too? Why you have to make this a scene? It's just pretend. Julian's grandfather is on his deathbed. This is his dying wish. It's a small thing to help him. Isla was convinced she was in the right. Mr. Croft had been like a second grandfather to her. Helping him fulfill a final wish seemed harmless. Why couldn't Caleb understand? She picked nervously at her perfect manicure. Caleb laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Humiliation, sorrow, and a deep, aching pain swirled inside him, too tangled to name. Their wedding was days away, and his bride-to-be was fighting with him for the right to be another man's girlfriend. Isla saw the laugh, saw the look in his eyes, and paused. She raised a hand, about to try and explain, when her phone buzzed. A glance at the screen, and her expression shifted. She answered, and a frantic voice came through the speaker. It was Julian. Isla, my grandfather's setting me up on blind dates again. I'm out of excuses. You're my only hope. I can't just marry some random girl. Isla clutched her phone, her gaze flickering uncertainly toward Caleb. Okay, don't worry. I'm on my way. She bent to slip on her heels, ready to leave. Caleb's voice, raw and raspy, stopped her. Isla, if you walk out that door, there's no coming back for us. She hesitated, turning her head slightly. Caleb, once this is over, I promise I'll make it up to you. And then she was gone, leaving him standing alone in the silence. Caleb watched her walk away, a self-mocking smile twisting his lips. Back in college, half the guys on campus had a crush on Isla, but most were too intimidated to even approach her. Everyone who tried had been shot down so brutally it became a campus legend. Only he had charged forward, relentless. He'd get rejected, dust himself off, and be back in front of her the next day. I'm not interested in dating right now, she told him. He had just grinned, looking down at her. That's okay. I'll wait until you are. No one thought he had a chance. Even Mark told him, you've been at this for 2 years, man. Give it up. We're about to graduate. If you keep this up, you'll have gone through all of college without a single date. But he persisted. When she took an advanced calculus elective and an art major, signed up for it too, just for another chance to be near her. He'd never forget the moment at the beginning of their 3rd year. She'd looked at him, a new seriousness in her eyes, and brushed a snowflake from his shoulder. Caleb Hayes, let's give this a try. That try had lasted 3 years. He'd done everything for her, compromising on things he never thought he would, bending until he broke. Even their wedding, a once-in-a-lifetime event, was planned entirely around her wishes. She didn't like big crowds or dealing with relatives, so he'd agreed to the smaller East Orchid room at the hotel, only inviting their closest family. But now, he was done waiting. He was done compromising. Why was he always the one who had to give in? Because he was the man? Because he'd pursued her first? This time, his wedding was going to be massive. He wanted everyone there to celebrate with him. If the bride didn't appreciate it, he'd just find a new one. He looked down at his phone, at the empty chat history with the contacts saved as Sloan the Tyrant Kennedy. The single line stood out, stark and surreal. It's a date, then. October 8th. We're getting married. He and Sloan had grown up together, practically joined at the hip, but they'd spent most of their childhood at each other's throats. He pulled her pigtails. She twisted his ear. They got into a fight almost weekly, giving their parents endless headaches. Even as they got older, they were more like rival siblings than friends. Then he'd gone to college in Boston, and she'd gone to UCLA, and they'd lost touch. His world had revolved around Isla, following her wherever her ambitions took her. All told, it had been 7 years since they'd last seen each other. The last time they'd spoken was when he'd first started chasing Isla. Sloan had scoffed. "If you actually get her, I'll take your last name. If you don't, I, in my infinite mercy, might just take you off the market myself out of pity." When he finally did start dating Isla, he'd texted Sloan to gloat, but she never replied. The girl who used to like every single thing he ever posted went silent. He never imagined their first conversation after all this time would be him asking her to marry him. Staring at the unanswered text, Caleb felt like he was losing his mind. Sloan was probably on the other end of the line right now, laughing her ass off at him, laughing at how blind he'd been, at how he'd backed himself into this corner. So what if he'd landed the goddess he'd spent years chasing? The woman who was supposed to be his wife had just ditched him to go play girlfriend for her childhood crush. One call from another man, and she was gone. What did that make the 3 years he'd spent chasing her? What did that make him? A simp? A doormat? He took a deep breath, realizing for the first time just how pathetic he'd been. Fine. If she wanted to be someone else's girlfriend, then he didn't want her anymore. It's not like she was the only woman in the world. Stealing his resolve, Caleb sent another text to Sloan. Not a joke. "You in?" He waited. Nothing. A bitter laugh escaped him. Just as he was about to type something to save face, his phone rang. The voice on the other end was familiar, but different from his memory, deeper, more mature. "Caleb Hayes, if I'm going to get married, my husband's heart better not be occupied by someone else." The sound of her voice instantly transported him back to their schoolyard arguments. "I keep my promises. If I'm changing the bride, then after the wedding, there will only be room in my heart for one person." Why after the wedding? They both knew. The man who had just 2 days ago loudly announced his engagement was suddenly swapping out the bride. He needed time to move on, to untangle the 6 years of his life that were wrapped up in Isla. It wasn't a clean break. A soft laugh came from the other end. "You dare mess with me, and I'll have you hogtied and dragged to the altar myself. Don't forget, you've never beaten me at anything." Her voice dropped, a playful purr. "You come." "No, forget it, you're too slow. Wait for me in Chicago, fiancé." After she hung up, Caleb felt a strange tingle in his ear. Had Sloan always been this? Flirty. He looked at his phone's calendar. 10 days until October 8th. His gaze swept over the cold, empty apartment. "Isla, you wanted to play pretend?" he murmured to the silence. "But I've always preferred the real thing. This time, I'm the one leaving you." Isla didn't come home that night. The next morning, his phone buzzed incessantly. It was a group chat for Isla's inner circle, about 20 people. He'd been so proud when she'd added him in their second year of dating, thinking it meant he was finally getting closer to her. It was laughable now. Julian had been in that group from the start. In the chat, Julian had posted a photo. He and Isla were wearing matching hoodies, standing incredibly close. Her head was bowed as she fixed a button on his shirt, a faint blush on her cheeks. Julian was giving her a look that could melt steel. The comments poured in. "You two actually look really good together. Seriously, what a gorgeous couple." The chat blew up, a stream of praise. Julian then sent a voice note. "Guys, I didn't have a choice. My grandpa is on his last legs, and he was trying to force me into an arranged marriage. He just wants to see me settled. I had to ask Isla for help. Could you all do me a favor and like my new post? Thanks, everyone." Caleb clicked on Julian's profile. The picture was the same one from the chat. The caption read, "She said yes. Finally have someone to keep me in line. Don't be too jealous, guys." And right there under the post was a single, solitary like. From Isla. Caleb laughed, a raw, angry sound. So he was being two-timed, and they were flaunting it right in his face. The people in that group chat knew he was there, yet they deliberately egged them on, calling them a perfect match. Not a single person mentioned him. "Caleb, you really let yourself become a doormat for people to walk all over." His phone rang, snapping him out his thoughts. It was Sloan. Well, you answer fast. That offer from yesterday, still good? You weren't just drunk texting your queen, were you?" Her voice was as snarky as ever, but underneath it, Caleb thought he heard a flicker of nervousness. It had to be his imagination. When he didn't answer immediately, her tone sharpened. "Look, I already told my parents. If you dare back out now, I'm going straight to yours." Her mock-threatening tone made him smile, chasing away some of the bitterness. "Pfft. Sloan, how old are you? Still tattling to the parents? Relax, I'm not backing out." "Well, have I ever lied to you?" he said, his voice softening. "Don't worry, my future wife." Just then, He heard the front door open. What wife? The voice made him hang up instantly. He turned. Isla stood there, still wearing the matching hoodie from Julian's picture. Caleb forced a smile, though his heart felt like a lead weight. Nothing. I was just saying. You're about to be my wife. Just got excited, talking to myself. It wasn't the right time to blow everything up. Isla's brow, which had been tightly furrowed, relaxed. She'd expected another fight, but here was Caleb, smiling at her. Still, something felt off. She softened her voice, trying to soothe him. Don't worry. I went with Julian to see his grandfather today. He's really sick, Caleb. The doctors say it's just a matter of days. Please, just be patient for a little while longer. Dressed in that hoodie, she moved toward him, reaching for a hug like she always did. But Caleb took a step back, and her hands froze in midair. I was just cleaning, he said quickly. I'm covered in dust. Let's not hug right now. Isla let her arms fall to her sides, staring at her empty palms. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. The next morning, Isla woke up as usual and got ready for work. Sitting at the dining table, she paused and looked at their housekeeper, Maria. Is there no oatmeal this morning? Maria looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, miss. Vance, I don't know how to make that kind. Besides, I wouldn't have the time with all the other preparations. Isla was confused. But I have it every morning. Maria seemed genuinely shocked. Could it be that, Ms. Vance never knew? Mr. Hayes always made it. He'd get up at 5 every morning. It has to simmer for 3 hours, and you can't leave it for a second or it'll boil over. She added, but today, Mr. Hayes hasn't gotten up yet. Isla was stunned. She had no idea. She only knew that the oatmeal was creamy and delicious, and since she'd started eating it, her stomach problems had vanished. To learn now that Caleb had been waking up at dawn to cook it for 3 hours, every single day for 3 years. It was impossible not to be moved. But the oatmeal, which hadn't been missed a single day in 3 years, was gone today. Is he still angry about yesterday? For some reason, the thought settled a strange sense of calm in her. A small smile even touched her lips. If he was angry, it meant he still cared. Maria, watching from the side, was utterly baffled. Why was she smiling about not getting her breakfast? Caleb, meanwhile, was still sound asleep. If he knew what Isla was thinking, he would have laughed. He was simply done playing the role of the unpaid, unappreciated caretaker, waking up when his eyes could barely open, just to protect Isla's delicate stomach. And for what? She'd eaten it every day without a second thought, taking it completely for granted. He was done. A few more hours of sleep were worth far more than that stupid oatmeal. When Caleb finally woke up, he was surprised to see Isla working from the sofa. This was a first. The woman who would go to the office in a hurricane, the workaholic Isla Vance, was working from home. Seeing him, Isla looked up from her laptop. Caleb, breakfast is ready. Go eat. Dressed for work and wearing her gold-rimmed glasses, she looked sharp and captivating. He used to love this look on her. He was proud of how brilliant she was, and he was content to be the man supporting her from the background, even if other people didn't get it. Normally, he would have walked over and tried to kiss her, only to be gently pushed away. But today, looking at her, he felt nothing. Isla, a cheerful voice cut through the quiet. Both of them turned toward the door. Julian, dressed in athletic wear and radiating youthful energy, breezed past Caleb and plopped down on the sofa right next to Isla. You're a hard woman to find. Why aren't you at the office today? I went all the way there for nothing. The fragile truce between Isla and Caleb shattered. As Caleb walked away toward the kitchen, Isla adjusted her glasses. Did you need something? She asked Julian. He draped his arm casually over the back of the sofa, his fingers twisting a strand of her hair. Grandpa didn't buy our Instagram post. He wants more pictures, Isla. More convincing ones. More intimate. He leaned closer. If he doesn't believe us, he'll start setting me up on dates again. And you know I only want to marry someone I love. Isla saw her own reflection in his eyes and felt a strange pang of guilt. She glanced instinctively toward Caleb. He wasn't far, and he could hear every word. In the past, he would have stormed over and pulled them apart. Now he didn't care. Julian followed her gaze to Caleb, a flash of jealousy in his eyes. He quickly masked it with a look of surprise. Oh, hey, Caleb. Didn't see you there. He turned back to Isla, his voice light and breezy. It's just a few pictures. You're not going to be petty about this, are you, man? Both of them were looking at Caleb, waiting for his permission. Caleb managed a small smile. And what if I say no? Julian's smile froze. He turned to Isla, his expression turning into a pout. Isla, Grandpa's waiting. Isla pinched the bridge of her nose, then sighed in resignation. What do you want to do? Julian's face lit up again. Caleb watched it all unfold, feeling as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over his head. His opinion had never mattered to Isla. If she cared what he thought, she wouldn't have agreed without even asking him. He chewed the toast in his mouth. It tasted like cardboard. It was true. The only one who had ever truly fallen in this relationship was him. Wake up, Caleb. It's time to wake up. Out of Isla's line of sight, Julian shot Caleb a triumphant smirk. He wrapped an arm around Isla's shoulders, pulling her half into his lap and resting his head intimately on her shoulder. Isla looked visibly uncomfortable and tried to pull away, but Julian stopped her. Look at the camera. Smile. His intentions were obvious. He pressed himself against her, and every time she tried to create some distance, he closed the gap. Come on, Isla. We have to make it look real. Right there, in front of Caleb, they took picture after intimate picture, arms around her waist, her head resting in the crook of his neck. Even Maria, the housekeeper, stared, her eyes darting between Caleb and Julian, utterly bewildered. Caleb couldn't take another bite. He dropped his fork onto his plate with a clatter. I'm going upstairs. Julian looked up at the sound, his face a mask of innocence. Oh, is Caleb mad at me? Isla looked at Caleb's half-eaten breakfast, a flicker of frustration in her eyes. It's just a few pictures, and you were watching the whole time, weren't you? She thought he was just being jealous again. Caleb was a great boyfriend, but he was so insecure, more possessive than any woman she knew. Just as she finished the thought, Julian leaned in and pressed his lips to her cheek. Everyone in the room froze. Click. Julian held up his phone, then smiled sweetly at Isla. Don't be mad at me, Caleb. I just want to be extra sure. This way, Grandpa will definitely believe us. Isla was silent for a long moment, then let out a heavy sigh. Don't do that again. Caleb felt the breakfast he'd just eaten churn in his stomach, a wave of nausea washing over him. It was disgusting, utterly disgusting. Just then, a voice boomed from the doorway. Caleb, you ready to go? It was his best friend, Mark. He took one step into the apartment and froze. Mark stared at the scene before him, utterly dumbfounded. His eyes landed on Isla. Did you get a new boyfriend? You couldn't blame him for the mistake. Julian still had his arm wrapped tightly around Isla's shoulder, the two of them pressed together intimately. Isla's face flushed, but she managed to say no. Julian put on his most innocent expression. Please don't misunderstand, sir. I just asked Isla to help me take a few pictures. The fake sweetness made Mark's skin crawl. Don't call me sir, kid. I'm not related to some two-faced snake. He glared at Julian. Taking pictures? Then why are your arms all over my best friend's girlfriend? His eyes narrowed with contempt. And did you just kiss her? Is that the new, trendy excuse for being a homewrecker these days? Julian's jaw tightened at the insult, and he let go of Isla. He looked over at Caleb, his expression a perfect picture of a wounded puppy. Isla, I'm so sorry. I just wanted Grandpa to pass without any regrets. He turned his tear-filled eyes on Caleb. I didn't realize Caleb was so upset. If I had, his friend wouldn't be saying these things about me. As if on cue, the tears that had been welling in his eyes finally fell, splashing onto the back of Isla's hand. Isla's face hardened. She shot a glare at Caleb. Julian is just a kid. Why are you picking on him? She snapped. What kind of nonsense have you been telling your friends? The atmosphere became instantly charged. Caleb looked at the two of them, standing opposite him, and felt a surge of bitter amusement. A chill ran up his spine. Had he said a single word? His girlfriend gets kissed by another guy right in front of him, and she turns around and yells at him. Julian was a kid. He was 2 years younger than Isla, sure, but he was actually 6 months older than Caleb. Did she really think Julian was younger, just because he called Caleb man? Caleb smiled a cold, brutal thing. Isla, if you're pissed off, that's fine, but don't take it out on me. I haven't said a word. His voice was dangerously calm. Did my saying, I'm done eating, somehow mortally wound someone's fragile ego? Julian, oh sorry, little brother Julian, gets to kiss my girlfriend, and now he gets to dictate my appetite too? His words left them speechless. Caleb felt like the air in the apartment was toxic, thick with crazy. He grabbed Mark's arm. Since it seems we're interrupting your little photo shoot, we'll get out of your way. Do whatever you want. This was his girlfriend, always taking his love for granted, always doing things that hurt him, and then acting like he was the one being unreasonable. Out on the street, Caleb felt adrift. He remembered standing in the snow for hours in college, going to dozens of flower shops to find the biggest bouquet of roses he could, all so Isla might look at him. People passing by had stared and pointed, but he'd kept his head up, waiting for her to appear from her dorm. He'd stood there until it was dark, until he was about to give up. Then, she'd come running down, wearing only a thin sweater. Caleb Hayes. I'll do it. Let's give us a try. Now, reality was screaming at him, over and over. Caleb, the love you fought so hard for was a mistake. Mark watched his friend, lost in thought, nearly walk into a railing. I can't believe it, he said, seething. Isla always seems so untouchable, but she's really playing games. When I saw your post, I thought you were joking. Mark threw an arm around Caleb's shoulders, giving him a supportive squeeze. Caleb, I've got your back. A person like that doesn't deserve you. Caleb pushed his hand away and took a deep, steadying breath. Mark was still fuming. It's messed up, man. Seriously messed up. Caleb managed a wry smile. It's fine. She's not worth it. They spent the afternoon at a dive bar, shooting pool and drinking. Between shots, Mark muttered, that pretentious little prick. Caleb's phone buzzed, the ringtone jarring in the noisy bar. The screen read Isla. He hesitated, then answered. Caleb, are you still mad? Isla's voice sounded tired. No, he said, his tone flat. Tomorrow is our 6-year anniversary. I booked a table at the Riverview Grill. 7 o'clock. I'll be waiting for you. He had to laugh. It was always like this. Whenever they fought, she'd book a nice dinner, buy him a gift, show the slightest hint of weakness, and he'd come running back with a smile. Isla, you have 8 days left. Caleb's grip on his phone tightened. Okay, he said. After hanging up, Mark looked at him bewildered. Caleb, what are you doing? Have some self-respect, man. Caleb shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. I'm giving myself one last chance to see things clearly. Sometimes you have to rip the Band-Aid off. The next evening, at 6:50 p.m., Caleb arrived at the Riverview Grill. 7:00, 7:30, 8:00. The food had gone cold. Isla never showed. Caleb stared at the elegant, cold dishes and laughed at himself. He was a fool, letting Isla play him again and again. He pulled out his phone and started typing a text. Don't bother coming. We're done. Before he could hit send, his phone vibrated. A message from Isla. Caleb, I'm so sorry. Julian's grandfather took a turn for the worse. I had to go to the hospital. I'll make it up to you next time. Okay? Caleb stared at the message, the irony burning a hole in his chest. There would be no next time for them. He stood up and walked away without a backward glance. Just then, his phone screen lit up with a notification. An Instagram post from Julian. It was a picture of 3 hands clasped together, one slender and pale, one masculine and strong, and one covered in age spots. The caption read, if only this moment could last forever. Caleb recognized Isla's hand instantly. She had replied to the post at 7:30. Don't worry. Grandpa will always be with you. He saw it clearly now. Isla thought Julian was talking about his grandfather, but Caleb knew. Julian had feelings for her too. The most laughable part? At 7:30, while he was sitting alone waiting for her, she had time to comment on Julian's post, but not enough time to send him a text telling him not to wait. He felt a crushing weight on his chest, making it hard to breathe. So this was Isla's next time. He squeezed his eyes shut, but a single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down his cheek. Their 6-year anniversary meant less than a childhood friend's Instagram post. Did Isla think he was some dog she could just summon and dismiss at her whim? He once thought their love was unbreakable. Now he understood. In Isla's heart, he was probably nothing at all. Buzz. His phone vibrated again. A new message. It was from Julian. My grandpa's 80th birthday party is tomorrow at the Monarch Hotel. You're invited. It might be his last one. You wouldn't want to be disrespectful, would you? Caleb read the message and let out a cold, humorless laugh. Julian's little games were so transparent. I'll be there, Caleb replied. If the fake boyfriend was going to be this bold, why shouldn't the real one show up? He was curious to see what other tricks Julian had up his sleeve. The next day, Caleb arrived at the Monarch Hotel on time. The ballroom was already filling up, and heads turned as he entered. One glare, sharp and furious, was fixed on him. Isla. Her face was a mask of thunder as she strode toward him, grabbing his wrist. What are you doing here? She hissed. He yanked his arm free, his eyes filled with scorn. What? Did Julian forget to tell you? I'm here for his grandfather's birthday. Isla's brow furrowed. Now you're lying? Do you have to cause a scene right now? Julian's grandfather is dying. Can't you just let this go for one day? Her tone was that of a mother scolding a disobedient child. Caleb stared at her tense face, a wave of disorientation washing over him. When had she become such a stranger? Julian appeared out of nowhere, wrapping an arm around Isla's waist with a look of feigned surprise. Caleb, what a surprise to see you here. He bit his lip, looking at Isla with wide, innocent eyes. He's not here to cause trouble, is he? Isla's expression grew even darker. You need to leave. Now, if Mr. Croft sees you, it'll just make him worse. Watching Julian pretend to be completely clueless made Caleb's stomach churn. How could someone lie so shamelessly? Caleb pulled out his phone and held up the screen, showing Julian's invitation. Well, little brother Julian, you've really mastered the art of talking out of both sides of your mouth. Julian's face went stiff for a second before he quickly adopted a wounded expression. Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have sent it to you by mistake when I was sending out the mass invite. I would never have actually invited you. He looked at Isla, his voice full of concern. Grandpa is so fragile. What if something happened? His earnest expression seemed to convince Isla. But I never thought you'd actually show up, knowing the situation. He trailed off, his tone implying Caleb was being deliberately cruel. Caleb watched the pathetic performance, utterly disgusted. Don't worry, he said, his voice dripping with ice. I wouldn't dream of ruining your little show. A deep, rattling cough cut through the murmur of the crowd. All eyes turned to see an old man being wheeled into the room by a nurse. Mr. Croft was pale and thin, but his eyes were sharp. He weakly raised a hand, beckoning Julian and Isla to his side. Isla gave Caleb one last, long look before allowing Julian to lead her toward the old man. Caleb felt an invisible hand clench around his heart, squeezing until it hurt. Mr. Croft patted Julian's hand affectionately, then looked out at the assembled guests. Thank you all for coming to my birthday party today. His voice was raspy, but carried an undeniable authority. My greatest wish in this life has been to see my Julian settle down and start a family. His gaze settled on Julian and Isla, his eyes filled with satisfaction. And now, that wish has finally come true. He announced with pride, this is Julian's girlfriend, Isla Vance. A collective gasp went through the room. Everyone knew of Isla Vance from the prestigious Vance family. She was the star of her generation. No one had imagined she was with Julian Croft. As they looked at the handsome couple on the stage, Mr. Croft beamed. Julian tightened his arm around Isla, a faint blush on his cheeks as he nodded at the crowd. He nudged Isla gently. She frowned for a second, but at his silent plea, she relented, turning to Mr. Croft with a respectful smile. Mr. Croft's grin widened. The ballroom erupted with congratulations. A perfect match, made for each other. May you have a long and happy life together. Suddenly, someone in the crowd yelled, kiss, kiss, kiss. The chant grew louder, a wave of pressure washing over the stage. Julian couldn't suppress his smile, sneaking a glance at Isla. Her expression was stiff, her eyes instinctively searching the crowd for Caleb. He stood there, a solitary figure in the throng of people, looking as if he might be swallowed up by it at any moment. His face was blank, his eyes dead, locked on her. A knot of panic tightened in Isla's chest. The chanting from below grew more insistent. Julian's smile began to look strained. He leaned in and whispered, Isla, please, we have to. If we don't, Grandpa will be so embarrassed. Isla turned back to him, saw the desperate look on his face. Come on, Mr. Croft, don't be shy. Kiss her. Julian couldn't wait any longer. He grabbed Isla, pulled her close, and leaned down to kiss her. Her eyes widened in surprise, her lips parting slightly. He took the opportunity, deepening the kiss. Mr. Croft let out a hearty laugh from his wheelchair as the crowd cheered. Caleb stood below, a man on a separate planet from everyone else in the room. He watched as a thin string of saliva connected their lips when they finally pulled apart. He felt nothing. The pain was gone. It was as if his love for Isla had been completely extinguished. He took one last, long look at the two of them still kissing on the stage, then turned and walked away. When Isla finally looked up, the spot where Caleb had been standing was empty. Her heart seized, a strange sense of dread washing over her. She wanted to run after him, but Julian's arm held her fast. Isla, the party's not over yet. You can't leave, Julian pleaded, his voice a mix of desperation and a barely concealed triumph. Isla looked at his pathetic expression, thought of Mr. Croft's health, and gave up the struggle. She let him hold on to her, playing the part of the loving girlfriend, her mind a million miles away as she greeted guests, her eyes constantly darting toward the door. Julian saw it all, and his jaw tightened in silent fury. Caleb Hayes! Back at the apartment, Caleb threw himself onto the sofa, silent tears tracking down his face. So this is what it felt like to have your heart die. The image of Isla and Julian kissing was burned into his mind. His phone buzzed. A message from Julian. It was a picture of a pair of slightly swollen, red lips. The text read, Caleb, I'm so sorry. I really had no choice today. Everyone was cheering us on. I just didn't expect Isla to be such a good kisser. He followed the suggestive line with a pouting emoji, as if it had all been against his will. If Caleb hadn't seen Julian grab Isla and kiss her with his own eyes, he might have almost believed it. The veins on his hands stood out as he clenched his fist. He sent a voice message back. "Don't worry about it, little brother. I've had my fill anyway. You can have my leftovers." After the message sent, Caleb blocked Julian's number. Out of sight, out of mind. On the other end, Julian's face turned ashen as he listened to the message. He slammed his phone onto the floor, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of cracks. "Caleb Hayes, just you wait," he seethed. Just as Caleb finished his message, his own phone buzzed again. A text from Sloan. "Caleb, I'll land tomorrow. Are you picking me up? Wedding's in 7 days. You have to help me pick out a dress. I plan on being the most stunning bride in history, so no backing out." Caleb saw the message and typed out a simple, one-word reply. "Okay." He stared out the window into the night. "Caleb, it's time to let go. You're not exactly unwanted." He took a deep breath and started to pack. In his closet hung the few clothes and ties Isla had bought for him. They were all styles he loved. A shame not a single one had been a spontaneous gift. He'd always had to practically beg for them. "Isla, aren't you going to get a little something for your amazing, thoughtful boyfriend?" He'd whine. And she'd always look at him with a confused expression before reluctantly swiping her card. He used to think she was just clueless about romance. Now he knew the truth. It wasn't cluelessness. It was a lack of love. Caleb carefully placed each item into a protective garment bag, then shoved them all into a large garbage bag. His phone, forgotten on the bed, buzzed nonstop. "Isla, I'm not coming home tonight. Mr. Croft insisted I stay over. I'll be back tomorrow." "Isla, why aren't you answering your phone? Or my texts? I had no choice at the party today." "Isla, are you going to keep acting like this? Can't we just talk when I get back?" Before, he would have replied to her messages in a second. Now, the thought of even talking to her made him sick. He dragged the heavy garbage bag downstairs. A sanitation worker sweeping the street saw him, and his eyes lit up. "Son, you throwing all these clothes out?" Caleb nodded silently, placing the bag on a clean patch of sidewalk. "Yeah, if you want them, they're yours. Most of it's new." The old man grinned, showing the gaps in his teeth, and hauled the bag away. Caleb picked up his suitcase and walked in the opposite direction. He glanced at the messages from Isla on his phone, then blocked her number and deleted the chat. A beautiful face meant nothing if the soul was disloyal. "Caleb, just chalk this one up to being blind. You wasted 6 years." In a guest room at the Croft estate, Isla lay in bed, staring at the unanswered messages on her phone. She scrolled through their old chat history. In every conversation, Caleb was a ray of sunshine, his messages full of energy and affection. Her replies were always short, clipped. "Okay, fine, I know." The phone's glow illuminated her tightly furrowed brow. She knew he had always been the one putting in the effort, but she'd never realized just how cold she had been. She opened his profile and saw that all his posts were gone. She didn't know it meant he had blocked her. She just frowned, her unease growing. Outside, Julian, dressed in silk pajamas, knocked softly on her door. His face was a mask of triumph. But when Isla opened the door, it transformed into one of deep vulnerability. He ran a hand through his hair, looking at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Isla, Grandpa asked me to stay with you." His voice was low, with a slight tremble, as if he were being forced. Isla looked at his pitiful act and felt a surge of irritation. "Julian, I think we need to tell your grandfather the truth." The image of Caleb's dead eyes haunted her. She felt like something was slipping through her fingers. She wanted to end this. She was supposed to be marrying Caleb, but now he wasn't even jealous anymore. Julian froze, his eyes instantly turning red. Seeing her expression, his heart sank. Isla never made empty threats. This was real, but he'd come too far to give up now. He looked at her cautiously. "Isla, is it Caleb? Is he angry? Did he yell at you?" He sighed, his hand naturally finding the hem of her shirt. "If Caleb is really upset about this, I promise I'll go apologize to him personally after Grandpa is gone. Right now, he just can't handle any more stress." At the mention of Caleb, Isla took a deep breath, forcing down her frustration. "He didn't say anything. I'm the one who wants to end this. What we're doing is lying to your grandfather." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "I don't understand," he said, his voice cracking. "At the party today, why didn't you say no?" Isla's question hit its mark. She only saw Julian as a younger brother. She'd only helped him out of pity, but now things were spiraling out of her control. Julian flinched. I was scared. I was afraid of disappointing Grandpa." He lowered his voice, a hint of a childish whine creeping in. the same tone he used when they were kids, and he was begging her to play with him a little longer. Isla, please, just help me one more time. Just this once, I promise, he begged, tugging at her sleeve. Grandpa can't take a shock like this. If we tell him it was all fake, he won't last another 2 days. Tears streamed down Julian's face, falling silently onto the plush carpet. Don't you remember? When we were kids and your parents were never home, he was the one who took care of you. The words hit their mark. Isla froze, a storm of emotions raging within her. She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. Julian, this is the last time. Back in her room, her mind was in turmoil. She picked up her phone and dialed Caleb's number, but was met with a cold, robotic voice. The number you have dialed has been turned off. Isla's heart plummeted. He had to be furious. She immediately called her assistant. That new limited edition watch from Yves Saint Laurent, buy it for me. It was the first time she had ever proactively bought a gift for Caleb. He would be so happy. But Isla didn't know that this gift, the one she finally bought on her own, would never be delivered. The next morning, Caleb arrived at the airport early. He stood by the arrivals gate, waiting. From the crowd, a woman in sunglasses with short, electric blue hair emerged. She was tall and slender, her figure perfectly outlined by a tight leather jacket. She radiated a cool, badass energy. Caleb squinted, trying to place her. It was Sloane, but the confident, edgy woman in front of him was a world away from the scruffy, tomboyish girl he remembered. She looked like a completely different person. Sloane stopped in front of him. She took off her sunglasses, revealing a pair of deep, knowing eyes. Caleb Hayes. Her voice was a little rough from the flight, but when she said his name, there was an unmistakable note of joy. A soft, barely there smile touched her lips. Long time no see. Sloane raised an eyebrow, her gaze sweeping over his thinner frame. What happened to you? On a diet? Caleb stared at her, a mess of feelings churning inside him. She looked completely different, but the second she opened her mouth, she was the same old pain in the ass. Caleb scowled. Sloane, it's been years, and your mouth is still as sharp as ever. Sloane, click her tongue. Why are you using my full name? You planning on calling me that after we're married? She leaned in, shamelessly close. Why don't you try calling me wife, and see how it sounds? For once, Caleb was speechless. A faint blush crept up his neck. I can't believe it. 6 years, and you've gotten so smooth. How many poor guys have you corrupted? Sloane's eyes lingered on his face for a moment longer than necessary. When he looked up, her expression was back to its usual cocky nonchalance. Please, there isn't a man on this planet worthy of me. She sniffed disdainfully, a picture of arrogance, as if the entire male population was beneath her. Caleb couldn't help it. He reached out and ruffled her perfectly styled hair. Ow, my hair, you asshole. I'm going to kill you. The two of them walked off into the morning sun, their shadows stretching and merging behind them. In the bridal shop, soft music filled the air. Sloane tried on dress after dress, each one making her look more beautiful than the last. She had dragged him straight here from the airport, not even stopping for food, insisting that all the good dresses would be gone if they waited. How's this one? Sloane poked her head out of the dressing room. The brilliant white of the dress made her skin look like porcelain. Caleb, who had been slouched on the sofa, his brain fried from wedding dress overload, sat up straight. He stood and walked over to her. It's beautiful, he said, his voice full of genuine admiration. A flicker of awe crossed his face. Sloane had been ready with a comeback, expecting him to make a sarcastic comment. The straightforward compliment caught her completely off guard, and a deep blush spread across her cheeks. Oh, really? More real than a diamond. Caleb's lips curved into a smile as he reached out to adjust the train of her dress. His fingers brushed against her skin, and he flinched back instinctively. Sloane's eyes darkened for a second, but she quickly recovered. This is the one, then, she declared. Caleb nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. Just then, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Isla walked in, her arm linked with Julian's. We need to see your latest collection, Julian announced to the nearest sales associate. The associate's eyes lit up. Dressed head to toe in designer labels, this couple clearly had money to spend. It looked like her commission was safe for the day. She rushed over, beaming. You two make such a lovely couple. We just got some new designs in. There's one in particular I think you will absolutely adore. She led them to a stunning gown and began her sales pitch to Isla. Ma'am, just look at this one. It's a masterpiece from a world-renowned designer, just released this month. It would perfectly suit you in your husband style. Your husband? At the words, Julian's smile grew wider. He shot a subtle glance at Isla, but Isla didn't seem to hear. Her eyes were vacant, her mind a million miles away. From his position, perfectly in their blind spot, Caleb saw everything. He'd recognized Julian's voice the moment they walked in. He couldn't believe it. He'd been gone for one day, and Isla was already out shopping for wedding dresses with Julian. They had set a date for their own wedding, but had never even found the time to look at dresses together. How pathetic. His heart clenched, a familiar ache spreading through his chest. He lowered his gaze, hiding the bitterness in his eyes. Sloane followed his line of sight and saw them. A surge of jealousy rose in her, but she masked it with a casual tone. "What's wrong, Caleb?" Having second thoughts, her voice was laced with sarcasm. "Is that your blind-as-a-bat girlfriend over there?" She instinctively refused to acknowledge them as fiancés. Caleb shook his head, forcing himself to look away, but his pale face betrayed him. "Yeah, she's blind, all right, which means you lucked out. You should be happy." He tried to sound nonchalant. Sloane, who had known him since they were kids, saw right through him. But she didn't call him on it. She just played along. She definitely has bad taste. And that guy with her, he reeks of fake innocence. She waved her hand in front of her face. "I can smell it from here." Her playful antics managed to pull a small smile from Caleb, momentarily distracting him from his pain. Across the room, Julian held a dress up to Isla. "Isla, what do you think of this one?" Isla snapped back to reality, giving the dress a cursory glance. It's nice." Her gaze was still distant, lost in thought. Julian's smile faltered. He knew who she was thinking about. Caleb. Yesterday, his grandfather had called both of them into his room, saying he wanted to see them get married. But Isla would never actually marry him. Just as she was about to tell his grandfather the truth, Julian had quickly intervened. "Grandpa, don't rush us. Planning a wedding takes time, and Isla's company is so busy right now. How about we just take some wedding photos for you to look at first?" The old man had looked at his beloved grandson with his tired, cloudy eyes and relented. "Isla, my dear, I hope I'm not pushing you too hard." The truth had been on the tip of Isla's tongue, but looking into those hopeful eyes, she couldn't bring herself to say it. She just nodded silently. "No, of course not, Mr. Croft. I promise." She hadn't been able to go back to Caleb like she'd promised. She'd spent the entire day checking her phone, hoping for a message, any message. But there was nothing. Caleb must be so angry. The thought brought a strange sense of regret. If she hadn't agreed to help Julian, none of this would have happened. She and Caleb would be the ones here today, looking at dresses. He would have taken care of everything, and all she would have had to do was try them on. At the thought, her expression softened. "Caleb, let's go to another store." "I don't like any of the dresses here," Sloane whispered, tugging on his sleeve. She couldn't stand seeing him look so lost, and she didn't want him getting tangled up with that woman again. Caleb glanced back at the other couple, a cold glint in his eye. "Okay, let's go." He felt suffocated just being in the same room as them. Just as they turned to leave, Julian's voice boomed from behind them. "Caleb, what are you doing here? And who is this woman with you?" At the sound of his voice, Caleb and Sloane exchanged a look. So much for a clean getaway. Julian's tone was one of shock, but his eyes were filled with smug satisfaction. He was enjoying this. What an unexpected bonus to his day. He looked at Isla, his joy impossible to hide. A public humiliation. Isla would never forgive Caleb for this. Julian feigned ignorance. "Caleb, aren't you engaged to Isla? Why are you here, trying on wedding dresses with another woman?" He pointed at Caleb's suit and Sloane's gown. "Is that a matching set? You two look great together." As expected, Isla exploded. Her face darkened instantly. The moment she heard Caleb's name, she had spun around, only to see him with another woman. And that woman's arm was linked through his. "Caleb Hayes." Isla's voice was a low snarl. She thought of him constantly, and this is what he was doing. Shopping for wedding dresses with someone else? Caleb turned as Isla stormed up to him, shoving him hard. "What do you think you're doing, Caleb?" Her voice was a furious, choked whisper. "Why are you here with her? Why didn't you wait for me?" She grabbed his wrist, her grip so tight it left red marks. "You didn't answer my text yesterday because you were with her, weren't you?" Isla's eyes were rimmed with red. It was the first time Caleb had ever seen her lose control. He winced in pain and yanked his arm away. "Isla, what right do you have to question me? Where were you yesterday?" "Busy sleeping with Mr. Croft over there." Isla gasped, speechless. "You, how could he think that of her?" She reached for him again, but Sloane stepped between them, pushing her back. "You can run around pretending to be another man's girlfriend and try on wedding dresses with him, but he can't be here with me?" Her tone was light, but her eyes were razor sharp. The air between the two women crackled with tension. Isla was cornered, her face turning an ugly shade of red. She looked at Caleb, desperate to explain, but the words felt hollow. It's all fake, don't you know that? She pleaded, but Sloane blocked her path. Caleb let out a cold laugh. Fake? A fake public kiss? Don't be ridiculous, Isla. His gaze shifted to Julian. So fake you're picking out a wedding dress together? Isla couldn't form a response. Caleb, she stammered. It's for his grandfather's sake I couldn't. Caleb turned his back on her, a final, decisive movement. He didn't want to hear it anymore. Isla, I don't believe you anymore. Isla's eyes widened in panic. Caleb, she cried, starting after him, but Julian grabbed her arm. Isla, he whimpered, Grandpa, you really want to see us get married. He clutched her sleeve, his head bowed in a show of vulnerability. Isla watched Caleb walk away, a wave of helplessness washing over her. She stayed rooted to the spot, her eyes fixed on his retreating back. Julian watched her, saw how much she cared, and a fire of jealousy burned his chest. He lowered his eyes, hiding the venom in them. Caleb Hayes, why does she care so much about you? I was the one who knew her first. At the restaurant, light from the crystal chandelier cast a soft glow. Caleb mechanically chewed his steak. It tasted like ash. Sloane watched him force a smile, and her own heart ached. Hey, stop thinking about it. She's not worth it. She swapped his barely touched plate with her own, which she'd already cut into bite-sized pieces. Her bossy tone held a hint of something softer. Caleb managed a weak smile. I'm fine, but the despair in his eyes told a different story. Just as the waiter set down the final dish, a horribly familiar voice cut in. Caleb, fancy seeing you here. Eating out too. Julian stood by their table, Isla in tow, a picture of innocence. It was just one thing after another. Of course they'd run into them here. Caleb's grip on his knife and fork tightened. He said nothing. Since we're all here, why don't we eat together? Julian said, pulling out a chair for himself opposite Caleb without waiting for an answer. Isla sat down beside him, her expression stormy. She glared at Sloane, her eyes full of hostility. Sloane stared right back, and the silent battle between them resumed. Isla, the foie gras here is amazing. You should try some, Julian said, placing a piece on her plate. Isla didn't even look at it. She picked it up with her fork and moved it to Caleb's plate. Eat more, she said. Her voice was stiff, but there was a trace of tenderness in it. The old Caleb would have been thrilled. Isla never served food to anyone. But now, all he felt was disgust. This was the piece Julian had given her. She was just passing it on to him. Caleb's stomach churned, and he fought the urge to be sick. Julian's face went rigid. He glared at the piece of foie gras on Caleb's plate, his eyes flashing with hatred. He served another piece to Isla. Isla, you must be hungry. You need to eat too. Isla frowned, glancing from Caleb's stony face to Julian's expectant one. Not wanting to refuse, she ate it. She kept putting food on Caleb's plate, a rare show of affection. But Caleb just pushed every piece to the side. Isla's heart sank. Watching this, Julian's jealousy grew. He started piling food onto Isla's plate, desperate for her attention. Ms. Vance, are you trying to have your cake? And eat it too. Sloane's sarcastic voice cut through the tense silence. Isla's head snapped up, her eyes like ice. Who are you? This is between me and Caleb. It has nothing to do with you. Caleb's my childhood friend too. Why can't I have a say? Sloane shot back, not yielding an inch. For the record, the name's Sloane Kennedy. She crossed her arms, looking at Isla with open defiance. Isla's face grew darker. Caleb felt a headache coming on. That's enough. He shot to his feet. Sloane, let's go. Seeing him about to leave for real, Isla panicked. She grabbed his wrist. Caleb, wait. Just a little longer. Mister, Croft doesn't have much time. Her voice was desperate. I don't have a choice right now. You know that. Our wedding is already planned, isn't it? She lowered her voice. I know you're angry that I went behind your back. That's why you brought Sloane here. Just wait. Once this is over, I promise I'll make it all up to you. We can plan the rest of the wedding together, okay? Caleb turned and smiled, all traces of anger gone from his face. Okay, I'll wait for you. He looked down at her hand on his wrist. Can you let go now? Staring into his eyes, Isla numbly released her grip. Sloane glared daggers at her, chewing on the inside of her cheek. On the way home, Sloane couldn't hold it in any longer. Why didn't you just break up with her? You were clearly. The tough, cool woman from before now looked like a kicked puppy, her shoulders slumped. Caleb, walking ahead, didn't see. Because I'm not letting her off that easily, he said quietly. I want her to stand at that altar and know what it feels like to be left waiting. I can't wait to see her face when she realizes she's getting married all by herself. He turned to face Sloane. What about you? Over your old flame? Sloane, who had been secretly pleased with his answer, froze. What old flame? She blinked, looking genuinely confused. Caleb was intrigued. I heard from some of your friends from college. They said you went abroad to get over a broken heart that the guy you liked got with someone else. He leaned in, trying to get a better look at her face, but she pushed him away. On the dark street, Sloane's ears were bright red. Well, if you put it that way. I guess you're right. So you really had one? Wow. I told you everything and you kept this from me. He teased. Is he single now? Sloane's blush spread to her neck. She turned away. Sort of. Hearing that, Caleb felt a strange pang of disappointment, but he quickly dismissed it. He clapped her on the shoulder. Hey, it's okay. If you want to try and win him back, we don't have to get legally married after the ceremony. We could just put on a show. At that, Sloane's face darkened. She grabbed him in a headlock. In your dreams, Caleb Hayes. I am not getting a divorce, ever. Hey, Sloane, let go. I can't see where I'm going. Good. Maybe you'll walk into traffic. The next morning, Sloane dragged a bleary-eyed Caleb out of bed. Why do you have so much energy? He grumbled. Why do we have to come to an escape room this early? Sloane, dressed in a hoodie, leaned against the wall, idly kicking at her own shadow. The moment she saw Caleb, her eyes lit up. She looked less like the cool girl from yesterday and more like a college student. A smile played on her lips. Weren't you the one who was always complaining in college that you wanted to do an escape room? Now that I'm gracing you with my presence, you're complaining? Her words threw Caleb back in time. Escape rooms had been all the rage. He wanted to go with Isla, but she'd refused. That's so childish. I don't have time for games, she'd said. He complained about it to Sloane, who was all the way at UCLA, that he had no one to go with. Coming back to the present, he looked at the girl he'd known for years. She was always teasing him, always pushing his buttons, but she remembered. She'd remembered something so small for so long. A wave of warmth spread through him. From a distance, Julian saw everything. He'd only stepped out for a coffee and had stumbled upon this little scene. He pulled out his phone and dialed Isla. Isla, want to come do an escape room with me? Isla, buried in work at her office, pinched the bridge of her nose. I'm busy today. I don't have time. Just as she was about to hang up, Julian's voice came through again. Oh, okay. It's just, I saw Caleb here with that woman from yesterday. Looks like they're about to go in. He sighed dramatically. Well, if you don't have time, I guess. Address. After he gave it to her, the line went dead. Julian slammed his fist against the wall. Why? Why did she drop everything the second Caleb's name was mentioned? A few minutes later, a slightly out-of-breath Isla appeared at the mall entrance. Her eyes were stormy. Where are they? Julian pointed toward Caleb and Sloane, who were waiting in line. Isla marched past him without another word. Julian followed silently behind. When Caleb saw them, his smile vanished. Sloane's face darkened. Why were these two everywhere? They were like a couple of persistent flies. Before anyone could say anything, their group was called. The four of them were now a team. Inside the horror-themed room, a dark, creepy atmosphere enveloped them. Caleb was immediately engrossed, but when an actor jumped out, Sloane flinched violently. Without thinking, Caleb pulled her close. She stumbled into his chest, a secret smile touching her lips. Behind them, Isla's glare could have burned a hole through Sloane's back. She started to move toward them, but Julian grabbed her arm. Isla. The actor had reappeared. Julian clung to her, and she was forced to stop. Every time she tried to get to Caleb, Julian found a way to intercept her. Isla, look over here. This puzzle is impossible. He'd whine, pulling at her. Though she was physically held back, her eyes never left Caleb's face. Every smile he gave Sloane, every casual touch, sent a sharp pang through her heart. She was still convinced he was just angry with her, that he was trying to make her jealous. It never once occurred to her that he genuinely wanted to leave. After 2 long hours, the final door creaked open, and the dim light of the room was flooded by the bright lights of the mall. Caleb blinked, his eyes adjusting. Isla was on him in a second, her voice tight with anger. Caleb, you have a fiancé. Can you please keep some distance from Sloane? The accusation took him by surprise. And you, he shot back. Why don't you keep your distance from Julian? He jerked his head toward the man cowering behind her. Isla was speechless. She knew he was right. Julian quickly stepped forward, playing the part of the timid protector. Caleb, please don't be mad. I was just not as brave as you. I didn't mean to hold on to Isla like that. Sloane let out a cold laugh. Scared? You look pretty comfortable to me. Anyone would have thought you were her boyfriend. Julian's face went stiff, but he had no comeback. He just looked at Isla helplessly. Isla took a deep breath, pushing down her frustration. She looked at Caleb. Are you free tomorrow? Let's go pick out our rings. You always said you wanted one from Cartier for our wedding bands. Sloane's face fell, and her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Julian's eyes turned red, his jealousy palpable. Caleb just smiled. It was Tiffany's, not Cartier. She had never really listened, but it didn't matter anymore. It's fine. We can go wherever you want. The strained, dismissive tone of his voice made Isla's stomach clench with unease. They parted ways, each lost in their own thoughts. Sloane was silent the entire walk to the car, her head down. Later that night, Caleb's phone rang. It was Sloane. Are you really going to go pick out rings with her? Her voice was low, laced with frustration. Caleb chuckled, hearing the hurt in her tone. Of course not. I'm just playing along, so she doesn't suspect anything before the wedding. He paused, a mischievous glint in his voice. And besides, it'll drive that little manipulator Julian insane. He added, his voice serious now. I'm not in love with Isla anymore. Sloane let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Fine, she said, her voice regaining its usual sass. I'll forgive you. This time. Isla worked through the night, and the next morning she drove straight from her office to the jewelry store. It never even occurred to her to check the apartment, to see if Caleb was still there. She had faced down corporate raiders and hostile boardrooms, but she had never felt as nervous as she did today. A strange mix of anticipation and dread churned in her stomach. When she saw the iconic robin's egg blue of the Tiffany & Co. storefront, she eagerly reached for the car door. But just as her hand touched the handle, her phone rang. It was Julian. She hesitated for a second, then answered. Isla. His voice was choked with tears. Grandpa, he's not going to make it. Isla's heart stopped. He started coughing up blood last night, Julian sobbed. The doctor says he won't last a day. Isla, please, can you come see him? But Isla looked through the car window and saw Caleb's silhouette inside the store. He was there. A wave of relief washed over her. Isla, I know you were supposed to go pick out rings with Caleb today, and I hate to bother you, but Grandpa is asking for you, Julian pleaded. Please. Isla was torn, but in the end, she turned away. The chauffeur, seeing her get back in the car, was confused. Ms. Vance, I thought you were. To Lakeshore General Hospital, she said, her voice tight. Mr. Croft's health had been a roller coaster for years. She knew this day would come, but not so suddenly. She looked back at the jewelry store one last time. Caleb, I promise I will make this up to you. Inside Tiffany's, Caleb was scrolling through his phone board. He'd been waiting for 2 hours. He glanced at the time, well past when they were supposed to meet, and let out a cold, bitter laugh. God, I'm an idiot. Stood up again. For a long time, he just sat there, laughing at his own stupidity. He should have known. Even if Isla felt guilty, he would always be the one she could afford to neglect. What a joke, he muttered, getting up to leave. As he walked out, he saw a suspicious figure in sunglasses lurking in a nearby alcove. When the person saw him looking, they quickly turned away, trying to act casual. Sloane waited a moment, then peeked back around the corner, only to find Caleb standing right behind her. She yelped and jumped back. What are you doing here? Caleb asked deadpan. Sloane's disguise was ridiculous. Did she really think a pair of sunglasses and an oversized trench coat would fool him? Caught. Sloane ripped off the sunglasses. I was just passing by, she explained unconvincingly. I was thirsty, so I was going to get a smoothie. She held up the smoothie in her hand as proof. Caleb just stared at her. Sloane fidgeted under his gaze. So, she didn't show? She asked, trying to peer past him into the store. Caleb snorted, which was answer enough. A smile bloomed on Sloane's face before she quickly suppressed it. Ahem. Well, since she's not here, we should go. We're getting married in 3 days, and we still don't have rings. Isla rushed to the hospital to get an update on the situation. The doctor removed his mask, his expression grave. Mr. Croft's condition is critical. I'm afraid he won't make it through the night. Isla felt the world tilt. On the way over, she'd assumed Julian was exaggerating. Now, the doctor's words hit her with the force of a physical blow. She staggered back, pressing a hand against the wall to steady herself. But underneath the shock, a part of her felt a strange sense of relief. Once Mr. Croft passed, she would be free of her promise to Julian. She could finally go back to Caleb and build their life together. Her mind was a war zone of conflicting emotions. In the hospital room, Julian was slumped over his grandfather's bed. Grandpa, please don't leave me. The old man weakly raised a hand to stroke his grandson's hair. Julian, my boy, I know how stubborn you are. I just want to see you happy. When he saw Isla enter, his eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. He fixed his gaze on her. Isla, my dear, will you marry Julian? Will you take care of him for the rest of his life? Isla stared at Mr. Croft's frail, skeletal form, the words caught in her throat. The old man gripped her hand, his eyes pleading. He was placing all his hopes on her. Julian had always been a difficult, needy child, and Isla was the only one he truly cared for. With her by his side, he believed his grandson would finally be happy. Isla opened her mouth to refuse, but no sound came out. How could she marry Julian? She had only ever agreed to pretend to be his girlfriend. Her face was a stern, unreadable mask. A shadow of disappointment crossed Mr. Croft's face. Isla, you don't want to. Grandpa, don't say that. Julian choked out, a hint of panic in his voice. She does. She wants to. He looked up at Isla, his eyes swimming with tears. To Isla, it felt like the world was closing in. The dying old man who had been like a grandfather to her, the young man she had known since he was a boy, both were looking at her with such desperate hope. The refusal died on her lips. Julian, seeing her hesitation, quickly typed a message on his phone. Isla, please, I'm begging you. Just one last time. I don't want Grandpa to die with regrets. Another message followed. As soon as he's gone, we'll get a divorce. I promise. Isla closed her eyes, defeated. Mr. Croft, don't worry. We'll get married. The very next day, Julian eagerly dragged Isla to the city clerk's office, explaining that his grandfather was desperate to see it done. In reality, he could barely contain his glee. Isla was in a daze through the whole process. Even when they were taking the photo for the license, the clerk had to say, "Ma'am, you need to look at him like you love him. Scoot a little closer." Julian's face had darkened at that. But when the red-bound marriage certificate was in his hand, it all felt surreal. He had been going crazy with jealousy ever since he'd found out Isla had a boyfriend. He had loved her since they were kids. How dare Caleb Hayes swoop in and take her? But now she was his wife. All his scheming had paid off. He thought of the bottle of pills in his grandfather's study, and a flicker of ruthlessness crossed his face. If it meant he could have Isla, it was all worth it. Julian took a picture of their 2 marriage certificates and posted it online. The caption, "Finally married my Ms. Vance." Mark was scrolling through his feed when he saw it. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he was seeing things. When the picture was still there, he took a screenshot and sent it to Caleb. "Caleb, look at this. Julian and Isla got married." When the message came through, Caleb was in a tailor shop trying on suits. Sloane had insisted on dragging him here, making him try on what felt like 100 identical tuxedos. She was sitting on a sofa, turning a small ring box over and over in her hands, a goofy smile on her face. Caleb glanced at the message from Mark and felt nothing but contempt. The great Julian Croft, heir to a fortune, and all he could think about was a woman. He snorted. A snake and a bitch, made for each other. He tossed his phone aside. He was done thinking about Isla. Who she married was no longer his problem. After seeing the marriage certificate, Mr. Croft finally seemed at peace. He gripped Julian's hand, his tired eyes full of relief. "Julian, my boy, I can finally rest easy." With those words, he closed his eyes and was gone. The Croft household was plunged into grief. Isla, burying her own sorrow, helped with the funeral arrangements. Her parents had been largely absent during her childhood, and Mr. Croft had filled that void. He was as much a grandfather to her as her own. Now, at least, she had fulfilled his dying wish. After the funeral, Isla found Julian. "Julian, we need to go get divorced." His face fell, his eyes instantly turning red. "Isla, how can you say that right now? Grandpa was just buried, and you're already talking about divorce?" His voice cracked, the veins in his neck standing out. He was a mess of jealousy, anger, and grief. Isla looked at him, a flicker of pity in her eyes, but the thought of Caleb hardened her resolve. "Julian, I only married you to grant your grandfather's wish. Now that he's gone, there's no reason for this to continue." Her voice was cold, clinical. Julian's face went pale. "Isla, you can't do this to me. He hasn't even been gone a week. What will people say?" He clutched her sleeve, his voice a desperate plea. Isla's patience was wearing thin. They had a deal. What was he doing now? "Julian, you know exactly why I did this. Are you trying to go back on your word?" Her voice was firm. "My wedding to Caleb is in 2 days. I can't wait a week." Julian saw the determination in her eyes and felt a surge of anger. "Caleb, again. Why won't he just die?" He dug his nails into his palm, but his face was a mask of wounded resignation. "Okay, Isla, whatever you want." They went back to the city clerk's office. The clerk asked them the standard questions about the reason for divorce. They both cited irreconcilable differences. The clerk typed for a moment, then looked up. There's a mandatory 30-day waiting period for all divorces. You can come back in a month to finalize the paperwork. Isla was stunned. A waiting period? She had no idea. She stood there, her mind reeling, a deep frown on her face. A small, triumphant smile touched Julian's lips. He had known all along. Isla drove back to the apartment in a daze. She had planned on returning in triumph, telling Caleb that everything was resolved. Now, she had no idea how to explain this. Caleb will understand, she told herself. They could have the wedding ceremony first, and then get legally married after the waiting period was over. She walked through the front door into a house that was eerily silent. She could have heard a pin drop. A sense of dread washed over her. The house was cold and empty, with no signs of life. "Maria," she called out, but there was no answer. She ran upstairs to Caleb's room. It was empty. She opened the closet. All his clothes were gone. Her heart seized. A terrible premonition gripped her. She raced downstairs and found Maria in the kitchen. "Maria, where's Caleb?" Isla's voice trembled. Maria looked at her, confused. "Mr. Hayes, he said you two broke up. He moved out a few days ago." The housekeeper's voice was full of sympathy for Caleb. A woman who stays out for days on and wasn't worth pining for. The words hit Isla like a physical blow. She stood frozen, the world spinning around her. Broke up? Moved out. He had just left. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking, and tried to call him. The call wouldn't go through. She had been blocked. She tried to send a text. Blocked there too. Isla, who was always so calm and collected, completely fell apart. She grabbed her keys from the coffee table and ran out the door. She had to find him. She had to. Caleb loved her so much. He would never leave her. All she could see was the way he used to look at her, his eyes filled with adoration. Every time she turned around, he was there, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He couldn't have just left. He was just throwing a tantrum. That had to be it. Isla ran out of the house, a disheveled mess, a far cry from her usual composed self. She jumped in her car, breathing heavily, and peeled out of the driveway. Suddenly, her eyes fixed on a sanitation worker on the side of the road. He was wearing a light blue jacket, a jacket she knew all too well. It was the one she'd given Caleb for his birthday last year. She slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. She threw open the car door and ran to the worker. "Sir, that jacket." Her voice was shaking. The man looked up, wary. "A young fella gave it to me a few days back. Said he didn't want it anymore." He eyed her suspiciously. "You're not trying to take it back, are you?" Isla felt like she'd been plunged into an icy abyss. She knew how much Caleb cherished every gift she ever gave him. He would never just throw one away. But here it was, on a complete stranger. She couldn't lie to herself anymore. The image of Caleb in the bridal shop with Sloane flashed in her mind, and the panic intensified. Her hands trembling, she used Maria's phone to dial Caleb's number. The moment the call connected, her heart nearly stopped. "Maria?" The sound of his voice made her whole body tremble. She had never wanted to see him so badly. "Caleb," she croaked, her voice raw with desperation. "What is it?" Hearing her, his voice turned to ice. The change in his tone was like a slap in the face. Was she now less important to him than the housekeeper? "Why did you leave?" "Our wedding. It's in 2 days." She sounded pathetic, even to her own ears. A man who had chased her for 6 years, a man she had considered her future husband, couldn't just disappear without a word. There was a long pause on the other end, then a cold, humorless laugh. "The wedding? Isla, are you joking?" "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. "What do I mean? For someone so smart, you're awfully forgetful. Or did you forget that you're already married?" His voice was dripping with sarcasm. Isla's breath hitched. How did he know? She hadn't told anyone. It had to be Julian. "Caleb, listen to me. Let me explain. My marriage to Julian is fake." Fake? Is the marriage license fake, too?" "Isla, don't treat me like an idiot." He cut her off without a shred of pity. Isla felt an invisible hand squeezing her heart, cutting off her air. "Caleb, I know what I did was wrong, but I truly didn't have a choice. I love you. It's always been you." She was truly panicking now. Another cold laugh. "You love me? Isla, your love is cheap." Isla felt like her throat was closing up. She couldn't speak. "I'll be watching you at the wedding," he said, then hung up. Isla stood there, phone in hand, his final, chilling words echoing in her ears. Watching her? Did that mean? Was there still a chance he might forgive her? A tiny flicker of hope ignited in her chest. She had to take this chance. Caleb loved her too much. He would come back to her. On the other end of the line, Caleb stared at his phone with disgust. "Isla, You made me a laughingstock. Now it's your turn to see how it feels. On the day of the wedding, Isla arrived at the venue early. She had overseen every detail, all for Caleb. But as the minutes ticked by, her anxiety grew. By noon, Caleb still hadn't shown up. Her side of the ballroom was filled with friends and family, but his side was completely empty. Not a single one of his relatives had come. A cold dread began to settle in her heart. The guests started whispering, "I thought Isla Vance just got married to Julian Croft. I saw it online." Me too. They even posted the marriage license. It's been hours. Did the groom get cold feet? Even though they were trying to be quiet, their words reached her ears, each one a fresh sting. Isla's posture sagged, the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. Julian sat in a corner, watching her pace anxiously, his eyes filled with jealousy. He glared at the entrance, his hands twisting the fabric of his expensive suit. He was terrified that Caleb would actually show up. He scrolled through his phone, and a new post from Mark caught his eye. It was a picture of Caleb and Sloane. Caleb was in a tuxedo, Sloane in a stunning white gown, and they were both beaming. Caleb was looking at the camera with gentle, loving eyes, and Sloane was gazing at him, her smile radiant. The caption read, "At the West Garden Ballroom, witnessing my best friend's happiness." The West Garden Ballroom? That was right next door. Caleb had married someone else? Julian's venomous expression melted away, replaced by an irrepressible grin. He almost laughed out loud. Meanwhile, Isla was still staring at the door, her face a mask of desperation. "Isla, you have to see this. It's Caleb." Julian walked over, his face a perfect picture of shock, and handed her his phone. The moment she heard Caleb's name, Isla snatched the phone from his hand. She saw the picture. The phone slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor. The world went black for a second, and she swayed on her feet, nearly fainting. Julian caught her, pulling her a little too close. The West Garden Ballroom. Sloane. Rage burned in Isla's eyes. She pushed Julian away, gathered the skirt of her wedding dress, and ran toward the ballroom next door. "Isla!" Julian cried out, shocked. He never thought she would actually go over there. She, who valued her pride above all else. When they were kids, she wouldn't even admit she wanted a piece of candy. She was so concerned with appearing proper. And now, for Caleb, she was willing to throw away her dignity. Julian gritted his teeth in hatred and ran after her. In the next ballroom, Caleb's wedding was in full swing. He looked at Sloane, breathtakingly beautiful in her wedding dress, and was momentarily speechless. In the front row, Caleb's mother, Mrs. Hayes, dabbed at her eyes. She couldn't believe her silly son was finally married. And to the girl next door, of all people, she turned to Sloane's mother. "Mrs. Kennedy, I always thought your daughter was in love with someone else. How did these two suddenly get together?" She had been shocked when Sloane announced she was marrying Caleb. Years ago, she'd hoped it would happen. They knew the family, and it would be so convenient. But the two of them just never seemed to click. When she'd mentioned it to Caleb, he told her Sloane was in love with some other guy, so she dropped it. Mrs. Kennedy's eyes widened. "You didn't know? My daughter's been crazy about your son for ages." Now it was Mrs. Hayes' turn to be shocked. "What?" "Oh yes, she's been in love with him since high school." When some other girl confessed her feelings to Caleb, Sloane was so upset she refused to eat for a day. And when she heard he got a girlfriend in college, she insisted on studying abroad, said she needed to get away from the heartbreak. But she did well for herself, started a company with some friends promoting traditional culture. It's really taking off now. In just a few minutes, Mrs. Kennedy had spilled all of her daughter's secrets. On stage, Sloane was oblivious, still convinced she had played it cool. "Will the bride and groom please exchange rings?" The officiant boomed, his energy infectious. In the crowd, Mark was openly weeping. "Caleb, you guys have to be happy." Just as Sloane was sliding the ring onto Caleb's finger, a furious shout came from the back of the room. "I object. Caleb, you can't marry her." Isla, her eyes wild, stormed down the aisle and shoved Sloane away from Caleb. "Caleb, come with me," she begged, her eyes locked on the handsome, happy groom, a bitter jealousy rising in her throat. This was supposed to be her groom. Sloane let out a cold laugh. From a hidden pocket in her dress, she pulled out a red marriage certificate and waved it in Isla's face. "Isla, open your eyes and look. Caleb is my legal husband now." She leaned against Caleb possessively, staking her claim. The bright red of the certificate seared Isla's eyes. She stared in disbelief, stumbling back as if she'd been struck. The world spun, and a loud ringing filled her ears. Julian ran up and grabbed her arm. "Isla, let's go home. Caleb is married to someone else." His words were another knife in her heart. Isla yanked her arm free, her agonized gaze fixed on Caleb. Caleb, please, divorce her. We were together for 6 years. How could you just leave me like this? Caleb took a deep breath, his voice devoid of any warmth. Isla, the moment you chose Julian, we were over. From now on, we go our separate ways. His tone was final, absolute. Sloane watched Isla's desolate expression, her own anger boiling over. Security, get this person out of here, she snapped. What kind of lunatic crashes a wedding and asks the groom to get a divorce? Several large security guards moved in and forcibly dragged Isla out of the ballroom. The wedding guests whispered among themselves, pointing at the scene. Isla was thrown out onto the hotel sidewalk, her white dress now stained with dirt like a stray dog. Once Isla was gone, Sloane let out a sigh of relief. She turned to Caleb, her cheeks puffed out. Hey, you better not cheat on me. Caleb rolled his eyes. Don't be ridiculous. Was helping to sort through his belongings. With Julian's parents gone for years, he was the only immediate family left, and she wanted to help where she could. As she was cleaning, she found a small medicine bottle. When she read the label, her face went pale. This isn't heart medication. Diane worked in the medical field. The pills inside had no relation to the label on the bottle. They were a coagulant. Anyone close to the family knew that Mr. Croft's blood was already too thick. A drug like this would be a death sentence. Her face grim, Diane ran out with the bottle, finding Julian with Isla at the hotel bar. Julian, come here. I think someone swapped your grandfather's medicine. Julian took the bottle, and all the color drained from his face. He tried to remain calm. I don't know. I kept it in his study. I never touched it. This only made Diane more frantic. Think, Julian, did anyone come into the house when you weren't looking? Panic seized him. Aunt Diana, I really don't know. He stammered, wringing his hands. From a few tables away, Isla saw everything. She heard every word. Her eyes narrowed. A seed of suspicion had been planted. Over the next few days, Isla began her own quiet investigation. She contacted Mr. Croft's doctor, questioning him about the old man's condition and prescriptions. She obtained the hospital security footage and watched it frame by frame. Finally, she found it. The footage from the night before Mr. Croft died clearly showed Julian sneaking into his grandfather's room. In his hand was a medicine bottle, the very one that had been swapped. Isla's heart sank. She couldn't believe it. Julian would do something like this to his own grandfather. Her mind was a mess. She had always felt that something was off about the timing of Mr. Croft's death, coming so close to her wedding. Now, she had her answer. But why? Why would Julian harm his own grandfather? She was only now realizing that she had never truly known him at all. Isla saved all the evidence. Then she confronted him. Julian, why did you switch your grandfather's medicine? Julian, who had been thrilled that she had come to see him, froze. His eyes darted around, unable to meet hers. I didn't. Are you still going to lie to me? It's all on camera. Julian began to tremble. I just wanted him to live a few more days. Live a few more days? Do you have any idea that the medicine you gave him would kill him faster? Isla's voice was filled with rage and disappointment. She wasn't a fool. He was still lying. I didn't know it would do that. I swear, Isla, you have to believe me, he pleaded, grabbing her arm, his eyes shifting nervously. Isla's heart turned to stone. If you won't tell me the truth, you can tell it to the police. As she spoke, a group of officers entered the room. Julian stared at them, horrified. He never thought she would actually call the cops. Isla, please, I'm begging you, don't let them take me. He clutched her sleeve like a drowning man. I'm Croft. If I get arrested, what will people think? His knuckles were white, his whole body shaking. He was genuinely terrified. He could not have a criminal record. Julian, I gave you a chance. You've disappointed me more than I can say. Isla slowly pulled her arm free, her voice like ice. Julian collapsed to the floor, tears blurring his vision. Why? He cried hysterically. Why would you believe a video over me? The facts are right in front of me, Isla said, her voice sharp. And I don't believe for a second that you didn't know what that medicine would do to him. She couldn't bring herself to say that he had killed his own grandfather. The police started to drag him away. At that, Julian's last line of defense crumbled. Facts? Huh. He started to laugh, a wild, desperate sound. Isla, you are so cold-blooded. She frowned, confused. What are you talking about? You really don't know why I did it. He stopped laughing, his eyes full of venom. A terrible feeling washed over Isla. I have loved you for years, and you threw me over for Caleb Hayes again and again. Yes, my grandfather's death had something to do with me. He confessed, his voice cracking. I switched the medicine, but I just wanted you to stay with me a little longer. I never thought he would actually. He trailed off, shaking. He truly hadn't thought his grandfather would die. He had been just as important to him. But now he was gone, and Julian was haunted by nightmares every night. With his secret exposed, he couldn't hold it together anymore. You love me. Isla felt her entire world tilting on its axis. And to get me to spend more time with you, you were willing to sacrifice your grandfather's life. She had never known, and she could not accept that Mr. Croft had died because of her. The color drained from her face. She had always thought Julian was kind, innocent. She never imagined he could be so cruel. Yes, I did it all for you. Are you happy now? He shrieked, his eyes full of despair. If you hadn't been about to marry that bastard Caleb, if you hadn't been rushing off to pick out rings with him, I would never have hurt Grandpa. He glared at the woman he had loved his entire life, his eyes bloodshot. Isla, this is all your fault. He was still laughing maniacally as the police dragged him away. Isla was silent. She had never imagined this was the truth. She thought of Caleb's constant disappointment, of the finality in his eyes as he walked away. She finally understood. She had been blinded by Julian's act. She had wronged Caleb, and she had lost him. And because of her, Mr. Croft was dead. Isla leaned against the wall, and for the first time in her life, she doubted everything about herself. 3 days into their marriage, Sloane had had enough. She kicked her husband out of bed. Caleb, can you please learn some self-control? She croaked, her voice hoarse. She lost track of how many sunrises and sunsets they'd seen. Her back felt like it was no longer her own. Caleb tumbled dramatically to the floor. He clutched his chest, feigning injury. My lady, you wound me. Are you trying to murder your own husband? He pouted. Is it a crime to dote on my wife? Ding dong, ding dong. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Sloane gestured with her eyes. You get it. Grumbling, Caleb dragged himself to the door, wondering which idiot would dare interrupt his honeymoon. He pulled the door open, his expression annoyed, and then froze when he saw who was standing there. His brow furrowed. What do you want? He asked, his tone hostile. What are you doing here? It was Isla. His patience, already worn thin, snapped. He told her it was over. He never realized she could be so persistent. Isla's gaze fixed on the unmistakable love bite on Caleb's neck, and her breath caught. It felt like all the blood in her body had turned to ice. Caleb, she said, her voice strained. Let me explain. It was all Julian. He tricked me. I'm a victim in this too. She tried to step closer, but Caleb held up a hand, blocking her way. I'm a married man. Please keep your distance. Isla's eyes were pleading. Caleb, please just come with me. I can explain everything. All her usual corporate ruthlessness was gone. She looked like a wilted flower. Do you really love the woman in there? We were together for so many years. How long has she even been here? That's enough, Isla. Caleb's voice was like ice. Sloane is my wife now. Please show some respect. He looked at her, his eyes completely empty of the love that used to be there. Isla, don't you get it yet? I didn't leave you because of Julian. Isla was confused. Then why? He crossed his arms. I left because you chose another man over me, again and again. Because you never valued what we had. Isla, we were over long before this. Everything that's happened is on you. With or without Julian, we never would have made it. Every word was a knife, twisting in Isla's heart. She staggered back, her face ashen. Caleb, it's not like that. Who is it? Sloane's voice came from inside. A moment later, she appeared at the door. Her eyes landed on Isla and immediately turned cold. She shot a glare at Caleb. Are you going to close the door? Or were you planning on catching up? Isla started to say something more, but Caleb didn't look at her again. He turned and slammed the door shut. His final words drifted through the wood. I hope you won't bother me again, Isla. We are completely, totally over. The sound of the door slamming was a final, deafening punctuation mark on their relationship. Isla stood on the doorstep, her body trembling. She finally understood. She had lost Caleb for good. She slowly sank to the ground, covered her face with her hands, and began to sob. Behind the cold iron bars, Julian's hair was a mess, his eyes vacant. He looked up at the two police officers. I've confessed to everything. Is there anything else you want to ask? He had given up. He had failed. He had lost his grandfather, and he hadn't gotten Isla. The officers reviewed his statement, then left the interrogation room. Julian was alone again. He closed his eyes, his mind a blank. A few minutes later, the door opened again. Mr. Croft, you can go. Your grandfather's lawyer filed a letter of understanding on his behalf. You've been released. Julian's eyes, which had been fixed on a single point on the wall, flickered. He stared at the officer. My grandfather? The officer didn't elaborate. You'll understand when you get out. Grandpa, Julian whispered, utterly confused. Outside the police station, The bright sunlight made him flinch. His grandfather's lawyer was waiting for him. "Mr. Davison, what are you doing here?" Julian asked, his face pale and drawn. The lawyer walked over and handed him a letter. "I believe this will answer all of your questions. Mr. Croft left it for you." He called it his final gift. Julian's hands trembled as he took the envelope. "Grandpa left this for me." On the front, in his grandfather's familiar, strong handwriting, were the words, "To my precious grandson." He took a deep breath and opened it. The paper was yellowed, smelling faintly of ink. "Julian, my precious boy, by the time you read this, I will be gone." The first sentence made the tears spring to Julian's eyes. "I know what you did. I know you swapped my medicine." At that, Julian gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. Tears splattered onto the page. "I didn't have much time left anyway. Rather than live in pain, I chose to help you achieve your dream. I know how much you love Isla, and I wanted to see you happy. So, I chose to grant my grandson's wish, and in doing so, grant my own. As you open this letter, I know that you did not get the love you wanted. I had so hoped you would never have to open this letter at all. But Julian, you must remember, even if Isla Vance does not appreciate you, my grandson is an exceptional young man. You still have the Croft legacy, and you will meet someone who truly loves you one day. Julian, my boy, you must be strong and carry on. I will be watching over you from heaven." "Grandpa, you fool. Why were you so foolish?" Julian clutched the letter, his heart shattering. He collapsed onto the sidewalk, sobbing uncontrollably, all his pride and composure gone. Only now did he understand how stupid he had been. To chase a woman, to chase an illusion of love, he had hurt the person who loved him most in the world. He was filled with a regret so profound it felt like it would tear him apart. He finally understood the depth of his grandfather's love. A love so immense, so unconditional. It was tragic. The sun shone down on him, but it couldn't warm the ice in his heart. "Julian, do not regret. Keep moving forward. I don't blame you." That was the last line of the letter. It would be a pain that would haunt Julian for the rest of his life. The end, epilogue in the park, a family of 3 was taking a walk. "Mommy, is it true you had a crush on Daddy a long, long time ago?" their little boy asked, hugging his mother's leg and blinking his big, dark eyes. Caleb shot a teasing look at Sloane, curious to see how she'd answer. He'd heard the whole story from her mother, but Sloane was still too stubborn to admit it. Sloane felt his gaze on her and felt her ears turn red. "Of course not," she said, clearing her throat. "That's just your grandma making up stories." The little boy's eyes twinkled. "Okay, if Mommy doesn't love Daddy, then tonight Leo will sleep with Mommy. Because Leo loves Mommy, and Mommy loves Leo. Mommy doesn't love Daddy, so Daddy can't sleep with Mommy." Caleb's eyes widened. "Hey, you little schemer, where did you learn that?" Sloane watched the two of them, her husband and her son, and couldn't stop smiling. From a distance, Isla watched them, a solitary figure. After a long moment, she turned and walked away. At a gravesite, a man in a crisp suit stood perfectly still, holding an umbrella against the pouring rain. "Grandpa, I'm here. I'm sorry." He said the same words every year. "The Croft Corporation has expanded overseas. Are you watching, Grandpa?" Julian's eyes were red, his voice choked. "Grandpa, I miss you so much. Can you visit me in my dreams? I want to tell you I'm sorry, to your face." He knelt before the gravestone and wept, his head in his hands. But there was no one left to pat his head and tell him it would be okay.